Welcome back to the Marching Arts Podcast. I am the Stress Master.
And I am Kanan, also known as the Tumor, simply because I march spot B9. No other reason.
Yeah. And I'm Jen. Just Jen.
She's just Jen. We
Jen.
have an incredible.
Just dropped her video, and she's already got more views on her video in like
I think it was
8 hours than me and Justin.
It was
combined.
like 250 this morning when I woke up.
250. Hold on. Wait,
Not
what?
that you're counting or
It
anything.
was. That's what I'm counting.
Oh, I'm gonna put this up on the screen, but this is 284 to. Okay, she beat both of us combined, so you are correct. So why aren't you guys watching the other videos?
I reckon it's because her two fans have been watching it like over and over. They just got it on repeat lock.
Apparently. Well, thank you all for joining us.
Watch our other videos. We've got good stuff.
Yeah, we have over 200. Over 200.
Oh, I mean, my other React videos are like 80, so it's not like
it's because she's talking about Phantom Regiment. That's why.
I put it down to the editing, if I'm honest with you.
Oh, the editing, yes.
Sure. Let's just say that. But we have a great.
We got a guest on, don't we?
So today on the podcast we have Dave Edelman. He is the SoundSport and Open Class Coordinator. Really interesting conversation. We talked about a lot of different things. The version you guys are going to see is going to be edited down a little bit because we went for like an hour and 15.
At least.
So a long time. But great conversation. We learned a lot I didn't know. So
I have a completely different view of SoundSport now.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome back to the Marching Arts Podcast. Thank you all for joining us. We have a very special guest with us today, Dave Edelman. He is the DCI SoundSport and Open Class Coordinator. So thank you for joining us, Dave.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. And of course, we have Jen and Kanan with us on this adventure today.
Yo.
So thank you guys for joining us. And thank you all for your support on all of our videos. We just surpassed 2,400 subscribers, so we really appreciate that. So thank you all very much. But we're going to get down into it here. David, thank you once again for joining us. And we're really excited to talk to you about all this stuff that is going on. The momentum, I think, is picking up for SoundSport. I know it's been around for quite a while, but it seems to have been... The steam seems to be picking up a little bit more momentum in the last... Since COVID, actually. A lot more groups are doing SoundSport and moving up into the open class. So really excited to see that.
Post-COVID has been pretty amazing that way. There have been a lot of great things that have come post-COVID and a lot of challenges that have come post-COVID for the marching arts activity in general. But one of the things that's a highlight, and you're absolutely correct, is what's happened in SoundSport. And it's continuing now to flourish. And not just here, but throughout the world.
So let me ask you this.
How many foreign entities are there now? I mean, excluding the announcement from the UK, because I know there are some groups that travel from South America and whatnot. So I'd love to hear how many international groups we have.
We have a loose affiliation, I'll call it, with a number of international organizations in Indonesia, in Japan, in Central America, particularly in Costa Rica, and I believe even some groups in Colombia, and of course Europe has been a longtime partner through the drum corps activity, through all these years. And even now developing a relationship in Beijing with some Chinese groups.
Wow. So let me ask you this: If I pretend that I've just landed on a spaceship from Mars and I know nothing about the marching arts activity, how would you describe SoundSport, and how is it in the core basic principles different from drum corps?
Well, I feel like I've landed from Mars almost every day when I get up, so I can relate to that. So the interesting thing about SoundSport is that it's not a league, it's not an association of corps like world class, open class, all age class. It's actually a platform, and it's a platform that provides performance opportunities, because over all these years, going on 52 years now for DCI, we've created this really magnificent stage for the performing arts. And you see, of course, these iconic and legendary drum corps out there that we all know, like the Phantom Regiment and the Cavaliers and the Bluecoats and all of them. And what we are doing now is we're just sharing that stage, because part of the mission of Drum Corps International is to bring the life-enriching benefits of the marching music performing arts to more people worldwide. So what you're seeing is that mission that came into being about maybe 5 years before COVID is finally starting to come to fruition. And by making sure that everything that we're doing is mission driven, and of course it's got to be revenue driven too to make sure that we can fulfill the mission. But we're bringing this platform to more performing groups. And we do that with very few requirements, very few rules and regulations, very few policies. What we want to try to do is give them this opportunity to perform, have an exciting experience for their performers, and to do it in a way that is low cost, and to do it in a way that is non-touring. One of the things about SoundSport is the fact that it's travel to and from events on the day of the event, as opposed to doing overnight touring. So that model is not even part of what we do in SoundSport. Now, when groups are aspiring to move on and they want to go into a competitive class like all age or open class, then some of those things come into play, and we help nurture them and provide support for them to go through that process to get to all age or to open class.
So
Okay,
essentially,
so-
it can be a kind of a standalone. It is what it is, and you can do what you want to do and stay in this kind of forever space, or it can also be kind of a stepping stone to moving into the touring model drum corps in essence. Then, yeah.
Yeah, that's perfectly correct. So, in other words, there are categories in SoundSport, and some of the categories, to give you an example, are independent groups, scholastic, international, alumni corps, mini corps, and then ultimately drum corps, if there are groups that want to do that. And there are some organizations that participate in SoundSport every year for a number of years. They really have no desire to do anything else. They're not interested in being an all-age drum corps or an open class drum corps. And they're not all drum corps. We've got a lot of bands. This past year, I think we had 9 marching bands around the country performing, several in Indiana, and actually more than 9. There were just 8 in Indiana alone, and then a couple in Wisconsin, a couple in California. So what it has done is open the door for DCI to all the marching arts, as opposed to just a drum corps.
Mm-hmm. Are there different SoundSport events throughout the summer? Because I'm only familiar with the event that takes place during Championships Week.
Yes, and you're referring to the SoundSport International Music and Food Festival that goes on Saturday of the World Finals and now of the All-Age Finals, and that's been going on since 2013. But we now have a second SoundSport event. It was in Rochester last year. It'll be in Williamsport, Pennsylvania this year. And it's a SoundSport showcase that is spotlighting the mini corps competitions that come from the DCA side of things from the past. And they did that last year, and they'll be doing that again this year.
Now, did SoundSport always manage the mini corps event, or was that something that graduated when DCA shifted into DCI all age, and, or I shouldn't say graduated, but moved over, transitioned?
Yeah, that's a good question. DCA for years has hosted the mini corps competition, and they had the alumni corps come and perform on DCA weekend if you've ever been up to Rochester or any of their locations for their finals. They also had a really robust I&E program, individual and ensemble program, and they would love to rejuvenate that and get it back. But at this point, we have found a way to accommodate alumni corps, and we have found a way to continue the mini corps competition under the umbrella of SoundSport.
Okay. Because I know with freelancers, we have a very competitive mini corps full of alumni and people that never marched when the freelancers were around, because I know one of their members, her son plays with the mini corps as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, and we work with Carl quite closely on the mini corps, and also they do some performances in California that are not a mini corps competition, but they go out and perform.
Right. Right.
So tell us about you. Who are you? Who is Dave? What's your background? How'd you get into drum corps? All that good stuff.
Who are you? You want me to sing it? Okay.
Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
Who am I?
Well, I'm an Ohio boy through and through. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I was looking in the newspaper one day as a bored teenager, and my mother said, well, look in the newspaper if you're interested in doing more playing of your trumpet outside of school. And I found this ad. They were looking for trumpeters. And I called, and next thing you know, I'm at a drum corps rehearsal, and I'm marching in a drum corps. And when I was 14 years old. So I marched in that Cleveland corps. I grew up in it. I taught that corps. I wrote music and drill for that corps. I was drum major of that drum corps in Cleveland. It was called the Cleveland Caballeros. And then I directed the corps, and then went on to direct the Marion Cadets, also another Ohio drum corps. And after that, I got involved with Drum Corps Midwest, but at the time that was being run by Roman and Sue Blinsky, and they were looking for help to work at some shows, particularly out my way in Ohio, and asked my wife Carol and me if we would do that. And we said, okay, so what is it? What do we do? He said, well, you go out and you run the show, you're a contest director, Carol will do the tabulating of the judges' scores, you work as a team, and you're essentially the event management of the show. Okay, so we did that for a while, and then DCI hired me on to do the same thing with them in the mid-90s, and I worked as a contest coordinator for Drum Corps International all the way up until 07. And in 07, J.W. Kester was the open class coordinator for about 3 or 4 years just prior to that. And he was moving on. As a matter of fact, I think he was moving on to take a job at the Phantom Regiment. And he left DCI, and that's when they called me and they said, do you want to take the job that JW was doing as the open class coordinator, which at the time it was Division 2 and 3. And I said, okay, and what do I do? Another one of those situations, they say, want to do this? And then, well, sure, but tell me what I have to do. And off we went. So I did that. I just finished my 17th year as open class coordinator and just completed my 3rd year as the SoundSport coordinator.
Oh, wow.
You're busy.
Yeah. I'm having both of those. That's a lot.
This is a great retirement gig.
Right?
Yeah.
I can imagine.
All that stuff I just told you, I was teaching full-time high school and college.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Wow.
I'm never going to complain again.
Complaining doesn't help.
Yeah. So the thing is, as you well know, I think I may have told you. So my background is obviously I marched DCI from 87 through 92, and I also spent time marching in the UK. So I moved to the UK about 20 odd years ago, and I marched with a couple of corps over here, the Cheshire Cadets as well as the Kids Grove Scouts. So the activity over here is very near and dear to me. And I was sad to see the demise of the activity here post-COVID. And obviously there's been a big announcement. Through the magic of editing, we'll probably put something in over all of this. There's obviously been the big announcement with the partnership between SoundSport and Drum Corps UK. Correct me, am I wrong in assuming that extends to Drum Corps Europe as well, or is that just Drum Corps UK?
They have their own separate organization, so it's Drum Corps UK, but there are a lot of similar and parallel things going on in the rest of Europe.
Yeah, because when I saw this, it was a move that I actually, I'll be brutally honest, I thought it should have happened probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think we started to see the writing on the walls over here before COVID, when we lost corps like the Company and Beatrix in Holland and the Senators in the UK, you could see the demise. You could see things getting smaller and us losing corps quite a bit. And then obviously I think COVID over here was the absolute death knell. I think one of the things that you guys got right in the video announcement that was absolutely nailed, was spot on, is that what we don't have in the UK is we don't have music education in the schools. So it's very difficult. And what you tended to find, like in corps like Kids Grove, for instance, we were actually quite old. We were when we came over to DCA, we were probably the oldest corps at DCA as far as average age wise. So I think this is really a good idea. How did that whole thing come about? Who contacted who, and how does this look moving forward then?
Well, we've had a relationship with DC UK for a number of years, and some of their folks have been coming over to attend DCI championships, every year. And from that, we've developed a relationship, and they've been able to see up close, like with the SoundSport Festival in Indy, all of that in action. And they decided this past year, they were looking really hard at it and decided, well, let's go ahead and let's develop a relationship here. And we're going to have SoundSport in the UK. And I think it's great. It's going to be a great program for them, and it might help revive some of those groups.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the big problems that we have over here obviously sits around, well, number one, weather. It rains all the time. Doesn't matter where you are. Number two is actually finding outdoor rehearsal space to begin with for your typical drum corps. And also, because there isn't that culture of music education here, what I like to call the NIMBY culture, the not in my backyard culture. When you do find somewhere outside and it's not raining, then all you do is get people having a good old whinge at you because you have the audacity of having kids off the street not doing bad stuff, so. And then the other thing as well is you had super corps here. You had Kids Grove, you had Company, and you had U-Ball. And when you looked at the numbers that those three corps were putting on the field, members wise, those three corps had more than probably the rest of the corps on the field combined. So there was a massive competitive gulf as well, And I always thought that, well, why don't we just bring it inside, put it on a basketball court where 20 horns is probably more than enough. And it's a lot easier to record to recruit 20 horns to be competitive than it is to try have your 20 horns compete with our 60,
That's interesting as you say that, because SoundSport, I was talking earlier about very limited rules or requirements. It just takes a minimum of 5 people, and there is no maximum. So we've had as many as 200, 300 people on the tarp, at some of these performances, but a minimum of 5. Instruments can be anything that you want to play, and the programming can be anything you want to do. It does not have to be thematic. It doesn't have to be like the drum corps or a lot of the competitive marching bands. You can do anything, and there's very little to no capital investment to get these groups started. So you don't have to go out and buy bugles, like we used to have to do, and buy a whole set of drums and all these things. You can pull together 8 or 9 people playing those plastic P-bones and P-trumpets that a lot of people are playing these days, and get somebody that has a drum set at home and come to play drums, and you've got it. You've got a group.
Yeah. I was just introduced by happenstance and viral social media to those Philadelphia parade bands that have all the props and all the craziness and everything. I would love to see some of them come to SoundSport events. I mean, I know they have their own thing, but what a riot. I mean, they draw people in and people just freak out over them.
Well, the Hummer bands that they do in Philly with the costuming and everything.
Yeah. Those are so cool.
Oh, yeah. And that was actually one of the inspirations for SoundSport. It came from both the mini corps competitions, the DCA, and the Hummer Parade, I think they call that there in Philly. And our marketing director, and who also was the director of Jersey Surf, Bob Jacobs, at the time, he and John DeNovi, who was our business development coordinator, came up with this idea of SoundSport. They really were the ones that kind of birthed this whole thing and got it started back in 2013. And it was based on those kinds of things, not necessarily drum corps. And it has morphed over time that it is a platform and it's helping to build drum corps, but that wasn't necessarily its original intent. And that's still not its intent. It services a certain number of those groups. But for example, we had nearly 50 SoundSport ensembles last year participating in shows all across the country and at the SoundSport festivals. And I would say maybe a third or more of those were drum corps, as we would think of them. And the rest were doing something else.
I'd like to kind of go back to the COVID years because, we're going on 2025 is on us right now. And from my perspective, we're still dealing with COVID fallout. We for my organization, being forced to take that year off actually ended up being a boon for us because it allowed us really to retool what we were doing. I'd love to hear how maybe the trajectory of SoundSport may have changed when you had this kind of forced year off, or if like we sometimes think that COVID was a weird blessing, as weird as that is. Um, I'd love to hear like some of the things that maybe came about because of that year off that you were forced to take and kind of look inwards like we all did.
Yeah, it is interesting because look how COVID has changed so many things, that we do today. For example, we're on this Zoom today, and we do that now with all this remote work. I'm working in the Cleveland, Ohio area for DCI that's based in Indianapolis, and we have a number of remote people that work for us, and as is happening in businesses all across the country, around the world, I suppose. So there have been some changes to just lifestyles and changes to the way we view things, perspectives, whatnot. So during that downtime, we had a chance to really do a self-examination of SoundSport. And what were we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish here? And that's when these categories started to develop and unfold over the last few years. The understanding that SoundSport is an all-encompassing platform, and I'll go back to saying that it's not a competitive league. It's not world class and it's not open class or all age. So because of that, it gives us a lot of opportunity and it gives us a lot of flexibility. So we've taken that, grabbed it by the horns, and we had been seeing 15 or 20 SoundSport ensembles signing up pre-COVID. Same thing happened post-COVID when we started back up in 21, 22, and then all of a sudden it has just blown up, and to doubling the number of participants from 23 to 24.
So,
That's awesome.
pardon, I'm just going to ask the question because I honestly don't know. Is it judged? Is it evaluated, SoundSport?
Good question. So you can opt to be adjudicated or non-adjudicated. So some of the groups come and they play. They'll give you an example, alumni chorus. If the Troopers alumni or the Spirit alumni want to come and perform at a SoundSport event, they don't have to be adjudicated, and they usually don't. Alumni corps don't do that. DCA, the same thing. Their alumni corps have been performing for years at their championships, never adjudicated, and they can do the same thing in the DCI events or any SoundSport events that they perform at. So you have that option. And some groups will actually reserve the option for later. They might just go to shows and perform an exhibition, and then when they get to Indy, they're adjudicated.
Are they adjudicated in the same sense of like they're given a number, or is it more like in scholastic adjudication where they're giving a ranking?
It's more like scholastic. So in other words, the whole competitive side of SoundSport is not as emphasized as much as the entertainment side and the education side and the innovative side, because going back to some of those other groups that are so creative out there in the world, do that, do the things that you're allowed to do because there are no rules. And they are adjudicated by a 3-judge panel. They are all DCI qualified judges, and they will judge that 3-judge panel if they're at a DCI show and a SoundSport group appears, maybe to open up the show, and they want to be adjudicated. 3 of the judges will adjudicate them, and they'll get a gold, silver, or a bronze rating. So we call it ratings only. Now they will.
And what are they judged? What are they adjudicated in? What captions?
It's just called overall impression, and there might be one judge that is overall impression music, one's overall impression visual, overall impression percussion or general effect, but it's just all 3 of the sheets look the same, have the same numbering system, and the groups will get a score. They'll get like an 88 or whatever, but it's an internal score, and they also will get the judge's commentary, or what we all still lovingly call the tapes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that nice bridge, if you will, for those corps that are maybe, I hate to use the word using, but are maybe using SoundSport for their eventual move on to competitive drum corps, so they are getting that feedback. Before we move away from SoundSport, I'm going to mention 2 words to you that we're all 3 of us here have been waiting to say to you, because we're all of a certain age and we do remember this corps very fondly, and that is Sky Ryders. Can we talk about the Sky Ryders, please?
Absolutely.
Because I am so excited about this.
That is exciting, isn't it? That those guys are
Yes.
putting it back together again. I think
It's like getting an old friend back.
Yeah, the Blues Brothers movie. They're putting the band back together.
Yeah.
And I guess that might be dating us as well. To even be
Yeah.
Blues Brothers, right?
As long as the bus doesn't have a cop transmission, cop tires, cop brakes, and all that
Right.
stuff.
So yeah, it's really terrific because it's a lot of the Sky Ryders people who are around back in the day, and they wanted to pull together and get the Sky Ryders back out and active again. So they're really doing it right. And I've had an opportunity to work with a number of them, with their board of directors. We are very much into the development process for these groups to be sure that they are getting a good firm foundation before they try to launch and do too much else with kids and performances and travel and whatnot. And they're doing that, and they're doing it all right. And they put a group out last year, and it would have looked like, if you saw them perform last year, it would have looked like a bunch of band kids that just came out, and they had shorts and t-shirts on and ball caps, and they came out with their instruments and their saxophones and whatever else. And they put like a clinical experience together with them that resulted in a performance. And then they performed that night at the show. And again, it was like one of those where we'll open the show with our performance. And that launched them in terms of kind of putting a face back on the Sky Ryders again. Very different these days. And a lot of the, I'll call them the purebreds, in our activity, that are drum corps all the way, and don't you ever call us a band or there's going to be a street fight. And what happens
That was
now,
never the freelancers, by the way.
We don't know any of those people on the DCP forums. No.
Well,
Wait,
I
if
do.
you want to break our ranks, perfectly fine. Come on through.
okay.
We're cool with it.
I know some of those people too. And
Yeah.
what's changed is that because it's wide open in SoundSport in terms of how you want to get your start, it looks like a band. So when groups first get started, even the groups that have come through the process to get to becoming a drum corps have likely started with multi-instruments because they just had whatever the kids had, bring them. Or if it's an all-age group, whatever you've got, bring them. So that's kind of opened the door to what I've always say, and people kind of look at me funny when I say this, but it's never been easier to start a drum corps. Now, the caveat is sustaining a drum corps. That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But it's never been easier to just get one started because it doesn't involve all that capital outlay.
So you said it's never been easier to start a drum corps. Okay. So I've got some instruments, and I've got some kids that are keen, and I've started the First Avenue Cadets, and I want to bring them to SoundSport. How do I do that? What is the evaluation process? Because I'm sure you don't know me. You don't know anything about me. I might be a complete creep for all you know. So I would assume there must be some sort of a vetting process or something like that for groups to come to compete. Or am I missing something here? Or?
Well, I'll use an analogy. Okay, so let's say you've got a band or you have an independent organization of some kind, and you want to go play at Universal Studios or Disney World. Or you want to go play at the Macy's parade, or you want to go to the Rose Bowl parade, or whatever. Think of that process of what that group would have to do to go play in that event. And that's essentially what we do with SoundSport groups. So they start out with their application. Hey, I want to do something in 2025 with SoundSport, an opportunity to perform somewhere. And it's usually because they're from a particular town or community that there's a DCI show nearby.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, you know what, this would be a great way to launch. Our kids are going to be inspired by the great pageantry and all the cool stuff that's going on at the DCI show. And they're going to just get so excited. We're going to go home, and then here we go. That's our launch, to get the group started. So we have a registration process. They register for the year. Whatever fees are involved, it's very nominal. Because again, we're trying to make this a platform that many people can participate in, and we don't want to throw up a lot of roadblocks. But then after that, course, you do have to have the stuff that nobody loves to do these days, like get the music licensing, and you've got to get the insurance, liability insurance for your kids or something should happen. And, all the things that a school band would need to have in place to go to Disney World. Okay. But if you're an independent group, you've got to do it all yourself. You don't have the support of the school to do all that. So we help independent groups through all of that paperwork so that they can be compliant, we call it. And once they're compliant, they're good to go and they can come and perform.
I think that's really good. I mean, back when we marched, there wasn't a lot of that going on. It was just like you get in the bus, you drive down the road, and hope you get to your next destination.
Sometimes you push the bus.
There was some sketchy corps knocking about back in the day.
Yeah.
You know what? And also, it reminds me of Drum Corps Midwest, because after championships every year, we would have these games on Sunday after the championships were over, and all the corps got together. It was a big picnic, and one of the games was a bus pushing contest. And you had to all run out of the bus door, run around the back of the bus, and push it like 50 yards or something. And whoever did that the fastest won. And
good thing the freelancers weren't there, because you'd have had no chance.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, good Lord, we can't ask kids to do that kind of stuff. It
would have come down to freelancers and VK.
Bus 7 didn't have a working starter the entire time I was there. So,
jeez.
So I want to talk about open class, but before we get to that, I'd like to talk about all age class, because obviously that's on your plate as well. This past year was the first year that all age fell under the umbrella of DCI. So, how did it go? What's your 10-word assessment of your first year of having all age championships at Indianapolis?
Well, it's a first year for DCI having all of that. For me, it's not my purview, but I've had the great opportunity to work with a man named John Carr, and he was the DCA president, who has now become the all-age coordinator on the DCI side of things.
All right, my apologies. I thought you'd looked after that as well.
Yeah, and we've worked together on that, on all age for this whole past year, and it's been a wonderful opportunity for me to get a bird's eye view of all age. And one of the things that most fascinating to me, two things actually. One is the tremendous growth spurt that's happened with the all age corps this past year, just by virtue of joining all age and coming to the Indy Championships, was a great recruiting boost for them. And most all of their corps saw increases in membership. And
every year we came over, we had 135 to 150 members.
Yeah,
from Kids Grove.
And the second thing is that the misnomer that all age is the older members, because the all age average last year or the year before, whenever they did the stats, was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. And there are most of the all age corps right now, without a few, that you'll go out there, see out there that are obviously like 35, 40, 50-year-old people. Most of them are teenagers or their early 20s. Some of them are people that may have just aged out with a world class or open class drum corps, and they're going to go to all age. They want to get 1 or 2 more years in. But we're even seeing more so the opposite of that. All age participants who then go on to march in a world or an open class drum corps.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said that in a previous podcast as well.
Now who is it that's moving from SoundSport into all age?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Who is it that's moving from SoundSport to all age? Didn't I see?
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
There's a drum corps that was moving.
Yes, I'll tell you about those all age groups and all the groups that are moving from SoundSport to open class and all age. In the all age division, there are right now 3 groups that just started the process this past year, as we call a candidate for all age. And they're advancing now to be an affiliate in all age this coming summer. They will compete in all age. They'll compete on the all age score sheets, not SoundSport like we were just talking about previously. Mm-hmm. And they will be right in the thick of competition with all the other all age groups once they pass muster in the spring with a final approval by the advisory committee, the all age advisory committee. And once that happens, There's the Northern Lights from Michigan, and there's the Steel City Ambassadors from Pittsburgh, and there's the Minnesota Brass that's been around
Oh,
many, many years as
forever.
well.
Yeah.
And coming back into All Age, they had been members of DCA, as were Steel City years ago. And Northern Lights is a brand new drum corps. They're just going to be starting their third year this coming summer.
So when they did these three groups, were they participating in SoundSport prior?
Northern Lights participated for the first time in SoundSport 2 years ago. So this was their second summer in SoundSport this past summer.
Okay.
Minnesota Brass has been performing in SoundSport and coming to Indianapolis and other shows in the Midwest for years after they left DCA. And if I understand it correctly, they left DCA because of so much travel, because DCA being so kind of East Coast centric, that corps like Minnesota Brass and Governor's and some of those out in the Midwest, it was really challenging to get over there and perform in the shows and go to championships. So now that the championships are in Indy, Minnesota Brass said, hey, let's go. We want to get back into All Age. So they're going through that process. So hopefully by this summer, there will be 3 new All Age corps competing.
So the candidacy level, the candidate level, that's reflective in open class too. That's a transitionary. Is that something where they have to spend a year as a candidate, or it's like they're a candidate right now, they'll be evaluated in the spring and they get full status come tour season?
I think of the candidate year as the honeymoon. Okay, so we're getting acquainted with these groups. They have applied and we've accepted them based upon any and all prerequisites to accept them. And we say, okay, we're going to work closely with you now this year on organizational development, governance, finances, all the different things, travels, health and wellness and safety, all those things that you need to do to be a successful All Age or Open Class Drum Corps. But you're not an All Age or Open Class Drum Corps yet. You're in the candidate phase, and you are still going to be performing in SoundSport. You want to be adjudicated, that's fine. Non-adjudicated, however you choose to do it. But it's going to be an observation year for them and for us. They're observing how DCI operates, get to know us better, and we are observing them and learning how they operate. And then we collaborate and we work together to get them to the second step. The second step is affiliate class. So these groups going into affiliate this coming summer are the Memphis Blues and Zephyrus in open class, and the 3 I mentioned for All Age, the Northern Lights, Minnesota Brass, and Steel City. Then the third and final phase is being accepted into membership, and that's done by a vote of the membership. So at the end of this summer, those 5 groups will be presented. If they all pass muster this spring, all 5 of those groups will be presented to their All Age or Open Class body of directors for a vote to say all in favor of Northern Lights or all in favor of Zephyrus coming into Open or All Age, and then they become full-blown members of the class.
Okay, so while they're affiliate status, they don't have any kind of voting power or anything like that. They're behaving like an open class or all age entity, but they have some restrictions, and then they have to be voted at by the governing body or the voting body.
Yes, so that's very well put. That's very well put. They get to participate. They have access to open and all age to compete, but they don't have the benefits of membership yet.
Okay.
So call me thick if you must. So where does Arsenal? Is it Arsenal and Boise Gems? Where are they in this process at the moment now?
And Eclipse. So,
Eclipse.
Those three corps. So we have a process. The way it begins is by November 15th of each year, you need to apply. So usually we've got a pretty good indicator of groups that are up and coming and are going to plan to apply. And let's use Sky Ryders as an example. We know that the Sky Ryders' ultimate goal is they want to have a functioning drum corps back on the field. So we know that at some point, one of these Novembers coming up, they're going to submit an application. And when they do, then we go over the application with them, the process with them, meet with their board of directors, make sure everybody feels they're on the same page and ready to go. And then by December 1st, DCI gives them a response. And we say, you ready to go? Or, well, maybe not. You guys really feel like you're ready to make this move right now? Well, maybe not, considering all things. Let's wait another year. So if they decide, though, that November 15th is when they're going to start, that's what, are going to apply. That's what Arsenal and Eclipse and GEMS did this past fall. And we just accepted their applications on December 1st.
Right.
Now they're in the honeymoon period. This is their first year. They're still in SoundSport. We're getting acquainted. And then they'll be going through the same process this coming fall as those 5 cores we just talked about.
Can I point out something real quick that in the last few minutes we've talked about 8 organizations that didn't exist a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
People say that this is a dying activity. It's not. If you think it's a dying activity, is it different? Yes, of course it is. There is growth in this activity, but you just need to look for it. It's if you want to get involved, this is where you get involved. This is where it happens. This is where keeping the activity, the marching arts, call it drum corps, call it sound sport, call it whatever you want to call it. This is where you grow it. This is where it happens. I think I'm over the moon that we're talking about. Like I said, 8 organizations that didn't exist a decade ago. 9
Well, and I know, and I know a lot of people really felt the loss of Southwind. As a long time open class core, and a great one at that. So you feel that, and then you go, that's it, it's over. We're just going to lose all of our open class cores. Everybody's dying. And it's like, well, no, it's just, this is kind of an incubator. We have to, grow it. It's a grassroots effort. It feels like, that we're growing from the bottom, not the bottom per se, but from the ground level. And the activity has to build from some point. It can't just start way up here. You don't come in way up here. You build.
It takes a lot to stay way up there as well.
Yeah.
And I think of it as a pyramid. And at the very pinnacle, at the top of the pyramid, are our best world-class drum corps. And then somewhere in the middle is the open and the all-age groups. And then somewhere at the base of that pyramid is all of these sound sport groups and all of these various marching arts groups that are interested and anxious to get involved and perform in the summer with us. And we need a very robust pyramid. We've had kind of an inverted pyramid for many years because of the loss of so many drum corps, and that really has been hard on the activity. And we've learned some lessons, and one of those is that we want to help corps be successful. We want to help aspiring new organizations be successful. So what do we need to do that? And that's where this process came into place. It started formulating before COVID around 2018, 2019, but we actually didn't put this new process of candidate affiliate member in place until post-COVID in these opportunities now we've had the last couple of years.
Oh, I was going to say, I hadn't seen, SoundSport had been its own entity that happened to take place during this weekend or this week. But I hadn't seen that feeder program until post-COVID. I didn't know that it wasn't around. Ignorance on my part. I just assumed I hadn't noticed, so I didn't realize that it hadn't been around until post-COVID, that this development program is actually brand new, essentially.
Well, how we do it is new. The evaluation process has existed for decades. Almost every core since like the 80s probably had a process they had to go through to become a drum corps. And too often, too many things were overlooked. And it was just like, how many kids do you have? We have 100 kids. Do you have bugles and drums and flags? Yes. All right, you're in.
So crazy.
and that's where and Jen, you coined this term that I love. That's where you had the kitchen table drum course.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And the kitchen table drum course. I hate to say it, our old core, the Freelancers, was a big time kitchen table drum corps. And where is it now?
I surely didn't coin that, by the way. That's I did not coin.
You're the first one I heard say that. Sorry.
Okay.
You know what? I call it the shoebox drum corps, because all the financials for the group organization are in somebody's shoebox in their dining room.
I just think it's much healthier now. I think, and one of the things that I was kind of really noticing is, like, in the last probably decade, I think, or so, as more corps started having issues and things like that, I think it's really been great that DCI has really stepped up and said, okay, well, you guys need to have a healthy program. You need to be having a healthy organization for your students, and health and wellness has become more of a thing. And I mean, because there was times when I marched, it's like you twisted your ankle, you just sat on the sideline for a minute, and then you got back on the field. I mean, there was no wellness coaches and all that stuff. And I think it's great because the demand is so much higher. And when we marched, and we did some visuals, but it's not like them. They're running, playing, and stopping and doing visuals and doing all this body movement. So I think it's really important to have a healthy organization that supports a healthy group. And then I think you're kind of seeing like organizations kind of realizing like maybe they shouldn't field because they don't have that structure in place. And I think that kind of helps deter groups from competing that shouldn't really be competing, you know what I mean? And they're not healthy enough to compete.
Yeah, and when you said structure, it also brings another point forward, and that's that the structure of the drum corps that is aspiring to move into all age or open class is not just, how many brass and drums and do you have a safety plan and do you have buses, but there's the corporate side, and then there's the program side, or program and operations, let's say. And we look very closely at the operations of these groups, and we're not so interested in the rest. And some of the new groups coming to us will say things like, oh, we've got a great staff, and we've got creative people that are going to design this wonderful show for us. It's going to be fantastic. We've got 50 kids already coming to rehearsals. And the questions we begin asking them back are things like, who's on your board of directors? How many people are on your board of directors? How often does your board of directors meet? What do your board of directors talk about when they meet? And we started.
Do you have bylaws? Yeah.
Well, there's a good one. Do you have bylaws? Yeah. Oh, have you ever? I had a group not too long ago. I said something about their bylaws, and I read their bylaws. They submitted them to us, and I said, "Well, it says in your bylaws that you're supposed to do this when you bring a person onto the board." And somebody said, "Oh, wow, I don't think I've ever read our bylaws." I was like,
wow,
see,
yeah,
it's time to read your bylaws. So
yeah,
that side of the organizations that's the side we live in. And when I say we, I mean the DCI ensemble administration people like me and John Carr, and the people that are coming in, the drum corps that are coming in. We're living in that world with them of what does your nonprofit performing arts corporation look like? Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about your drum corps later, because we know that you're going to get good teaching staff and creative people because they're everywhere. We've got so many great, talented people out there now. There's no doubt they'll train your kids well. But what we want to figure out is if you've got everything else in place to sustain a successful organization, not for 1 or 2 years, but for many years into the future.
Mm-hmm. Open class is structured differently. And a lot of people always ask these questions online and social media because they don't understand a full difference of open class versus world class, especially when it comes to like the financials and what's required of open class versus world class. Now, a tour for open class, nobody is required to go to Indianapolis. I mean, in both classes, nobody's required to go to Indianapolis, but it's one of those things like, a tour for open class looks much different, yet the numbers, like there was just a discussion online about gold still is a $5,000 or $6,000 tour fee, but they're inherently a kind of a different structure in what's required of them tour wise. Now their tour is still 20, 21 shows or whatever it is this year. They're still doing a full-fledged tour. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about how open class differs from world class in that logistic sense.
It's interesting that you brought that up because I'm working on a project for our annual meeting that is covering this actual topic. And when you look at the world class corps, they do have a few things that they are obliged to do. One of those is they are to tour pretty much the way all the rest of the world class corps tour, because there are certain obligations that they have as a member of DCI to attend a certain number of events, and especially to support them and be sure that they're successful. So mostly world-class corps are running about the same kind of tour, more or less, in terms of shows. They are obliged to be at championships. Every
Oh,
world-class
okay.
corps does have to attend the championships, or they could lose their status as a world-class drum corps.
Okay.
Now, the all-age corps work in a similar fashion. They have a mostly East Coast schedule of events. Almost all of their corps attend almost all of those events, more or less. So their tour, if you want to call it a tour, it's weekends only. But their travel schedule is to a certain number of events, fixed events that are in a certain location and time. They also are required to be at championships as part of the all-age rules. Where it's different for open class is we do not require our participants to be at championships. And there's a reason for that. It's an affordability factor or just a pure distancing factor. I mean, look at corps like the freelancers that had to come cross country, and sometimes it was at great peril, both safety-wise and financially, to make those trips. And we don't want to put groups in jeopardy of either just not having the resources to be able to do that. So it's not a requirement in open class that you have to come to championships. And because open class courses are spread all over the country, and we don't have a way to pull them all into a tour like the world class courses do, and we don't have a way to keep them all in one geographical location like the all age courses do, open class is at a tremendous disadvantage because they can't sustain their own tour, because we literally have people at all four corners of the country. We've got a corps in the Colombians in the Northwest. We've got the Northeast corps like the Spartans and Les Stentor up in Quebec. We've got the Heat Wave down in Florida, and we've got Gold in San Diego. I mean, all four corners of the country, we have drum corps. And when you look at the map, there's pockets. There's California pocket, Northwest Corps. There's a Northeast pocket. There's a couple of Southern groups, a couple of Midwestern groups, and never the twain shall meet. We just have this problem with so we can't put an open class tour together just with open class corps, because it would be either asking Impulse or a corps on the West Coast to travel all the way out to Pennsylvania, or one of those groups out there to travel all the way to Arizona or to Utah. So we have a dilemma. It's a annual dilemma that the open class corps have. So it's resolved by open class corps. Many of them you'll see in world class events, or what we call, quote, world class event. But you'll see maybe a couple of open class corps there, and now even starting to see more mix with all age and world, and all age and open, and it's mixing up more these days. So that actually is an advantage for open class, because it gives those groups, wherever they're at, opportunities to be in shows that are relatively close to home. Mm-hmm. But it oftentimes leaves a big gap in the middle of the season, because when the world class corps leave their home bases and they start on the trek across the country, they all kind of line up or gravitate down. The tour brings them down into San Antonio, and then off they go through this, I call it like a little dog and pony show, and they go all the way around Atlanta and up to Allentown and into Indy. Well, the open class corps, some of them can jump onto that tour, but most of our open class corps are not in proximity of where that tour is going. And if they are in proximity, there's no room to get them in the show, because the shows are already full of 22 world class corps traveling cross country, all looking for a show on the same night. So there might be a show over here and a show over there, 10 in each night in each show, and they're full. So it's like, where do you put another drum corps? So that's been the dilemma of open class, coupled with they operate on lower budgets, and they were the hardest hit class in all of the activity post-COVID. We went from 22 corps in 2019 going into 2020. When COVID hit, 22 open class corps. We now have 15, and we do see 5 coming up the pipeline in the next 2 years that might get us back to 20. But it's been a tough several years for open class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, even a tough for world class. I mean, Santa Clara had to take a year off. We just lost the cadets. So Santa Clara's issue was a compound of different things, but it's financial, all stemming from the pandemic, and we even still see some corps, I mean, and the reduction this year in tours. So a lot of corps are traveling less, competing at less shows this year, comparatively to last year.
I'll be interested to see what our budget sheets look like after this tour. You know, like just because it's a little bit more condensed. You know, for us at least, we're not chasing all the corners like we now. We'll be in Allentown for sure, but we're not. I don't think we're doing Atlanta. You know, so I mean, like we're going back up from Texas. We're going back up into the Midwest. So I don't think we're doing the Atlanta spur. So I'm kind of interested to see what our expense reports look like after this tour.
I was so excited to see some of the world-class corps break off and go through that Midwest tour they're doing this year. There's going to be a show in DeKalb again. It's going to be a big show. There's a lot of really great things happening. Yeah, a lot of great things happening now there. And that, reminds me of, harkens back to the Drum Corps Midwest days of maybe we can rejuvenate some more activity in the Midwest by bringing the corps through the Midwest more than just beginning of the season, drop off, everybody's gone, and then pulling back in for Indy.
Yeah, we're really excited about that DeKalb show because that's one of our home shows, and having it so late in the season, we're so excited about being able to bring polished. Like our show's gonna be really good by that point in time. All the shows are clean by that point in time, you know. So we're really excited about bringing Drum Corps back to the Midwest at the end of tour. You know,
can I share a personal moment on the celebration tour year when we came back in 21 after COVID? I didn't get to go to any shows all that summer until finals. So I flew in for finals week. I get there. It's Thursday prelims day. And I go up in the stands like I had always gone up into the stands on Thursday prelims because the open class corps go on first and then the world class corps follow them on prelims day. And I'm always there for every single open class corps to just cheer them on. And I sat down and I think there was maybe the Columbus Saints there as had a DCA corps, but they were invited to attend that year. And then there were 3 open class corps that returned in the 21 tour, and all the rest of the open class corps were off celebration tour year. They weren't ready to come back. And the shows started playing, and I was just sitting there crying. It was just spontaneous. It just happened to me, and it was like, I'm crying because there had been some wonder in that downtime, would we ever come back? And I just remember it being a tremendously emotional moment. So, and here we are, like you say, and great drum corps, the great drum corps activity to thousands of kids. And this past year, it was somewhere approaching 9,000 kids that participated, 9,000 people, I should say. They weren't all kids, some all age. 9,000 people that participated in the summer tour and in the championships in World Open, All Age, and SoundSport.
You know,
including what I like to say is my absolute personal hero of the 2024 drum corps season. And Justin, feel free to, through the magic of editing, is the single trumpet player in the Columbus Saints. She never stopped playing and never missed a single note. Honest, that was my drum corps person of the year right there.
I love it. You know, I have to go back to that celebration tour because I was at Januals the year before. It was virtual, you know, and it was one of those things where it was just like you could just feel the stress in the virtual room and thinking, how are we going to get this off the floor? How are we going to get this going? And then to watch it all come together and then to see the kids show up. You know, you're not there for the competition. You're not going to get a ring. You're not going to get all of that. You're just going out there for the love of the activity. And you're right. It was just like uncontrollable tears the entire summer. And I was there at semis. I couldn't be there semis, whatever, Friday night. I couldn't be there for Saturday. And I know I was in the stands and I know Phantom Regiment went on. And it was just kind of this blurred experience through all of the crying that happened during that show.
You weren't the only one, Dave, because I ugly cried during Phantom.
I just ugly cried in general the whole time. It was, and then people showed up to watch a non-adjudicated experience, you know, so it just spoke to the strength of the love and passion for this activity that we were able to put that celebration tour together and make it happen safely. We had more issues with COVID the next year than we did during that celebration tour. You know?
That was true of a lot of groups. And
yes,
and you're right. It brought a tear to so many of us. And what was the in the baseball movie like?
There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball.
There's no crying in baseball.
A lot of crying.
There's no crying in drum corps. Well, hey, we were crying.
There was that year. Holy smokes. I mean, it was just like we would see people in the concourse and just,
I cried almost daily after rehearsal when I tried doing it as an old man. So
yeah. Well, I do say the kids that came back in 21 for the celebration tour are the ones that really saved drum corps. You know, we did all the stuff behind the scenes to make it happen, like to make the experience available, but they're the ones that did all the work.
Agreed.
So what is, while we are actually, believe it or not, Dave, we are actually wrapping up now. Our wrapping up usually takes a while. So what in as brief as you want to be, what are you looking for in 2025?
Well, in 2025, we hope we can continue to do a few things that we've been doing for the last several years post-COVID, is to bring an experience of a lifetime to as many people as we can, to bring the life-enriching benefits of the marching arts, and specifically DCI, to more people worldwide, and I think we're accomplishing that. We're seeing new groups coming up and starting up to be just a SoundSport group of 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 people. We are seeing groups coming out of SoundSport into all-age and open class. We're seeing some stability in the world class. I know you were talking about some of the groups that are missing now, but we still have a fairly stable group of world-class drum corps that are leading, the pinnacle at the top of that pyramid, to show us all what can be done and to inspire us all. And hopefully that's working for all of those other groups. And we had 100 last year between World Open, All Age, and SoundSport, 100 participating groups.
Yep.
I think it's great. I mean, when I started marching, there was over 200 drum corps. Like small, medium, large back in the 80s, and it dwindled down quite a bit, and then now it's starting to, like you said, make a resurgence back up, and I think it's fantastic, especially now the SoundSport activity is what's giving people the vehicle to, start small and build and go big. I mean, what more can you say other than, I think that's going to be, the thing that's going to bring back drum corps into its, fullness, so to speak. I mean, it's still pretty big. I mean, it's huge. I mean, 100 groups is pretty, impressive.
That's impressive. Yeah.
I'll say that SoundSport has given us back the opportunity for groups with low cost to be involved, low or no travel, groups of 5 or more people to enter back into the activity. And that's where we're going to see our future growth, is by opening those doors and just come on in and come be a part of what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, the majority back in the day, look at how big Div 3 was back in the day. That was where the crux of everything was in 2 and 3. So it makes sense that would be the stable, repetitive pattern,
But we've learned how to do it. SoundSport has helped teach us how to do it in a way that's sustainable for smaller groups, and not expect them to be out on the road touring like the Spartans, or like the Pacific Crest, or like any other drum corps, but instead to work within their means, be successful, and have a stage to perform on. Our stage, our DCI stages, all across the country that we have built over all these years. Come on in. We're going to share our stage with you.
All right. Well, I think we're going to, Dave, thank you so much for your time. We're going to wrap it up. Yeah. We know your time is very valuable, so we truly appreciate, especially on a Saturday, but
right.
Yeah. But we truly appreciate it, and thank you so very much for joining us. And actually, we actually have Dale, who is the CEO of Sky Ryders, is coming on in a couple weeks, so that's going to be exciting to talk to him about his experience and kind of bringing the core back. So kind of we're all tying in together here, a little synergy. So hopefully, if you guys out there in our community have not subscribed, please consider doing so. That would help us out, help grow this community as well. And make sure you share this video with others that may not be aware of what SoundSport is, or are interested in starting a group. I know I've been talking about starting a group back here in California for many years.
Expired now.
I'm inspired. I'm scared, but I'm inspired.
5 people. That's all you need. 5 people.
5 people.
Pull together 5 freelancers from the past and bring them in.
There we go. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so very much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. We'll see you guys on the next video, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kanan.
Go join. Before I give my catchphrase, thank you very much, Dave, for joining. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes.
And if you're even remotely on the fence about joining a drum corps, maybe you don't have the time commitment to do a full DCI corps, have a look for SoundSport team near you. You're going to still get a great experience. It might give you that taste to go full hog the next time around. So, but anyway, time for my catchphrase, which is very simply, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you're doing it, no matter how you're doing it, no matter when you're doing it, just when you're doing it, you know what to do.
March on.
March on.
March on. Thank you, guys.